The following program is rated TV MAL. It contains strong language and is intended only for mature audiences.
TBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
You're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes.
And check out every episode of the show at basicallysports.tumblr.com.
Now here's your hosts, Zach,
Greg, Mike.
And this is Andy, and you're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
We got to get a couple of formalities out of the way. Happy Canada Day, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
My second favorite country. And to our Ohio listeners, happy License Plate Day.
Is that a thing?
Not really. Today is the first day that we are allowed to remove the front license plates from our cars in Ohio, and I'm more excited about that than any person should be. I don't know why, but I am. Happy License Plate Day, Ohio. Anyway.
Way to go.
Yeah, so the logo thing, we were talking about basketball. Do we want to do that?
Sure. I'd have to. Yeah, it was like your favorite 3 all-time NBA uniforms. It's completely informal. I had several of them already. I had like a short list, so it's not necessarily like a draft or anything. I just figured.
No, just what we like. All right, let's do it.
The one that immediately came to mind that inspired me to prompt you guys the question, which I enjoy that every time I check the board for messages, it's been like the same topic about NBA uniforms, and it's just kind of become our thread. It's Phoenix Suns.
We'll get to it next week.
Sure. Yeah. Phoenix Suns, Barkley era. Those jerseys to me are some of the best all-time NBA uniforms. I mean, I feel like they don't get much better than that. They've never been better than that. Phoenix, their uniforms have steadily declined over the years. They all pale in comparison to that one, and I really hope they get back to it.
I have to agree wholeheartedly. That is one of my favorite basketball uniforms of all time, and I would go one step further and say that outside of those uniforms, they've never had a good look. The one before it was just kind of hokey with the Western font and what have you, and then afterwards there was the Nash era with the stupid gray side panels. There was then after that they tried to replicate the Barkley one, but it was like really half-assed and it didn't look as good. And then now the current one just looks like the most like generic template they picked out of a Nike catalog that you could like possibly have. So like not only are the Barkley uniforms fantastic, I think they're by far like the best. Like they should be the default Suns uniforms. They're beautiful.
I think those uniforms are as creative design wise as you can get with an NBA uniform without it being stupid.
I think
right?
That era had a really good display of that actually. Like if you look at you look at the 90s and you're like at what point does the line get crossed, and it's like on the right side of the line, like where it's still like really good.
Yeah,
you have the Phoenix Suns, and then on the wrong side of the line you have the Atlanta Hawks.
That's exactly who I was gonna say. Atlanta. Yeah. I think the bad versions of those are like Atlanta, Milwaukee, and I know the one that's kind of like right on the line is those Jazz uniforms. Mm-hmm. I loved those Jazz uniforms because as a kid, when you get into your youth basketball leagues, same as any other youth league, they assign you a team name, and your jerseys are sort of those colors. So like my jerseys, they were purple, and then our numbers were light blue. They weren't Jazz uniforms, but they were purple and light blue, so you get called you're the Jazz for that season. And that was the year that I was. That was like the height of Stockton and Malone when they went to the finals and lost to the Bulls.
Whoa! Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
And so I loved those jerseys, and the mountains are a little kitschy, and maybe that's where you kind of bend to the wrong side of it. But I think that's like you're gonna get like a 50-50 split on do people love these things or not.
My view on those Jazz uniforms are kind of in line with what you've said. Like me being the contrarian that I tend to be, and I was really pulling for those Jazz teams when I was a kid, because like everyone loved Jordan at the time. Like Jordan was huge. Everyone was all over Jordan. And so I was sort of like pulling for the Jazz to pull it out for 2 years, and they never did. But like so I have nostalgic fondness for those uniforms. But I think the good way to describe it, because Zach, you kind of said they're right on that border between like 90s but good and like 90s and overdone. I'd say that the best explanation is that like if the Jazz, no, not the Jazz, but if the Suns went back to the Barkley look full time like today, I'd be like, yes, perfect, never change anything. But I think the Jazz Mountain look is probably best served as like a throwback alternate, where it's just like, yeah, like bring it back a few times a year, but that's all.
They even brought it back this last year, and like seeing it on the slimmer kind of modern template, it's like it doesn't work the same as it did then. Like
if they were to bring back that general look, they would have to change it. Like they'd have to tweak a few things.
Well, I mean, the part of the reason the Jazz uniforms, these ones have held up. I mean, yeah, you can associate it with success. Of course, they made the finals. They were really good teams, couple Hall of Fame players. But the other part of it is that the Jazz have not improved upon this look ever since.
The one they replaced it with was one of the worst uniforms in NBA history, the double blue Jazz one. Boring.
And they also then they took a weird turn where they tried to like channel the New Orleans Jazz kind of thing, and they did some interesting stuff getting the colors altered and stuff like that, and going for a more simplistic vibe, but it doesn't work. And when you can tell that your design that you've been trotting out, or the designs that you've been pushing for the last few years or decades even have been bad when you bring back something that in a vacuum is overdone and kind of ugly. I mean, this Jazz uniform is not great, but because everything else since has been trash, when you bring it back for these like modern throwback kind of things, it looks amazing. So seeing like players last year on the Jazz wearing these, I think they wore them for the home uniform, right? For a few games. It was just like, it was like I could breathe again, you know? Like there's just something about it that is, oh, okay, they look like the Jazz again. God, how long has this taken, you know?
Yeah, no, I can understand that.
I like the Phoenix. I think the Phoenix Barkley era jerseys and the Jazz jerseys you're talking about are probably the two best from that era, when you had a lot of really bad ideas too, like the Pistons with the double horse head thing and whatever it was the Hawks were trying to do, which I'm still not sure of. I'm trying to think of others.
I'd say the Raptors 90s, like the
Grizzlies,
the Cavs, the Cavs and the Party Popper uniforms. Those were in the 80s, weren't they? They weren't or were they 90s?
No,
they were 90s, early 90s.
Okay,
80s into 90s.
Yeah, but so I like both of those. Unlike Mike, I thought the boring Phoenix set wasn't bad, but I always thought it was cool because this was when I was a kid. Because it had a little bit of the sunburst thing going on in the shorts, and I thought that was really neat.
The sunburst thing on the shorts is like the one good design element of that uniform, in my opinion. Like,
I don't mind the old Western font and all that, but you're right. The Barkley era ones blow it out of the water.
Like the old Western font always sort of like, it seemed confusing because it's like, on one hand, Suns seems like a really like kind of, I guess not. I don't want to say progressive, but it's not a traditional name, right? No. Mm-hmm. And so I get it, like Phoenix is part of like the West, so in a vacuum, a team from Phoenix using a Western font I think is fine, but I think if you're gonna like name the team the Suns, it does need something a bit bolder and a bit more modern, because like that name and that color scheme, but then you go super traditional with like the Western font, it's like I'm not really feeling it.
If they were like the Phoenix Saloons or something like that, that font's perfect.
Yeah, like Phoenix, I'd buy a Phoenix Saloons jersey.
Fuck yeah, so would I.
It just makes me want a steak when I look at that jersey. You know, I just want to go to a steakhouse.
Exactly, like if they were the Phoenix Steakhouses, or what they call the place where you ate back in the Old West, the not the bunkhouse. They had a name for it. I can't remember anymore. But if it was named like that, that font's perfect. But Mike makes a good point. Trying to be like a kind of modern feel with that font really didn't work. But I'm with you guys. The Phoenix or the Barkley era Suns uniforms were great, and they should go back to some version of that immediately, is what I think. What else? Who wants to go next?
I think mine would have to be and clearly this is a homer pick. But I'm going to go with the 90s version of the Lakers uniforms.
I'll see your 90s version and go with the 80s Lakers.
See, the 80s one, the only thing that's really different is the diagonal word mark versus it being flat. And I think the 90s version, when they won the first title with Kobe, where you still have the drop shadow and it's a flat word mark, is perfection. The Magic, Kareem, 80s Showtime Lakers is still a great uniform. Just the tilt on the word mark always throws me off. That makes it look like it was just kind of slapped on there instead of like designed, you know?
All right. Yeah, I'm looking at the let me find a good shot of the
Zach, is this the one you're talking about there, or is that pre?
Yeah, I will concede the point to Zach on that. That's really good too. But they're the Lakers. I mean, everything's good.
There is
it looks. No, not anymore.
Looking at, by the way, it's on my work computer, so I can't send the link right now. But the NBA jersey database.
Oh, let's go there.
Tumblr.com has graphics for all teams of all eras.
Oh,
and
what's this NBA jersey? Okay, hang on, I gotta check.
Yeah, we gotta go there. That'll speed things up considerably.
Does Tank run
just I don't think so. It's very good. They even have the details down. If you go like to the uniforms of the 50s, they have the leather belts on the jerseys, which is funny.
What the idea that there was a point in time where teams were wearing yellow belts, leather belts for basketball is hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny. And see, the thing is with like a good classic basketball jersey, there's not too much flair to it. Like the other team I was going to put forth was a Celtics uniform, but those, for the majority, they all look the same. But I think those 90s Lakers is the right amount of classic with a little bit of flash to kind of make them really kind of stand out in terms of their history.
Yeah, no, that was those are good. I'm in like a really weird position when it comes to the Lakers, though, because like I really started paying attention to the Lakers during the Kobe years, right?
Yeah.
And so the Kobe era Lakers uniforms, at first glance they seem like the same, but they're not. They changed a considerable amount of them. And when I first really, started getting into, basketball uniform history, I was like legitimately surprised to see that there was that much difference between the Lakers, like the Kobe Lakers, and then the Lakers that preceded them. Yeah. So it was weird because, like, to me, in my mind, like the classic Lakers looks from the 80s and then like early to mid 90s, that look like at first glance struck me as like incomplete or funky or wrong because it didn't seem like the Kobe era ones, but I've come around to them.
I have to turn in my uniform geek card, guys. Right now I've got to step out.
Why?
The Lakers had the slanted word mark in 86 and lost it in 87, and I never even noticed. Never, and I followed that. I watched that team all the time. Never even fucking noticed. Never even noticed it. And
Did you notice the changes in the shorts over time? Did you ever notice those things? The slight difference in the shoulder or the shorts.
No, I'm out. I'm sorry. I have to turn it all in. I'm a big fraud. It's as simple as that.
Wow.
Honestly, yeah. I get it. Like, if it had happened, like, when Kobe was drafted and they switched to the straight across word mark, but this happened between losing to the Celtics in 86 and winning the title in 87, and I never even noticed.
I've got a question I want to run by all of you guys, and so what do you guys think of the double blue Laker uniforms?
Like the Jerry West era, the throwbacks.
Yeah. I loved when they would bring them out as a throwback.
Right.
That blue and white with the curly Los Angeles script it's pretty damn clean. I like those a lot. But I mean, the purple and gold is just
Yeah, I mean,
it is what they are.
I mean, it is. We are kind of at the point where we can't really undo the purple. Like that is the Lakers at this point. Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because like I agree with you, Zach. It's a really clean look, and I always really liked how they said Lakers like horizontally down the. No, sorry. They said Lakers. Just up to down, like straight down the shorts. That was always interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like a lot of the preferences seem to be skewed towards the 90s.
We haven't gotten to me yet. We're gonna go back further.
Okay, well, but I'm saying it's all in the past. Like I was looking through this database. The one team that stood out to me in particular is like a team that has, to me, achieved their best look probably in the last few years is the Milwaukee Bucks. I feel like the Bucks finally have some.
I disagree.
That's fine, But I mean, I just looking back through the Bucks' history, I see. I mean, there's definitely some good stuff. It looks like in the I can barely read this; it's so small. It looks like the mid '80s. But as far as like, I mean, the black uniform is just trash. But as far as like a good modern uniform in an era where uniforms are mostly just kind of tacky and just almost too much, I feel like those ones are fairly restrained. But I'm curious to see as we talk about this, who brings up something from the 2010s, like in the last 10 odd years where it's like, that's my favorite look.
I've got one that I could throw in that it would be in my top 10. I don't know if it'd be in my top 3, but I've got one from that era that I would throw in there. A couple actually. I think it depends. I mean, if you want to count just we'll even give them 3, a home and away and 1 primary. The Cavs, I thought a couple times during that era came up with some really nice uniforms. The first round of LeBron was pretty solid, I thought.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And then I kind of like the second time around when they won the championship, except for, of course, those stupid black sleeve T-shirts. But the home and away, I thought, well, very simple, were very clean looks. So I like those a lot too. So it's not all like 70s, 80s, 90s for me.
No, I think you're right, because when I'm thinking of like modern uniforms, I think we have this problem in the NHL a little bit too, where the best new jerseys that have been unveiled in the past 10 years are mostly all throwbacks, and it's either throwbacks or it's way too modern, kind of garbage looking, and so it's hard to say like the Sixers are in a good place right now, but they're pretty much based on what they used to wear. So is that really a great new modern uniform, or is that just, you should have never dabbled with the dark arts and changed in the first place?
But to me, that concession is actually like, you can take that and screw that up. Like there's been plenty of times where teams have tried to be like, we're going back to our roots, and they tease something in the uniform and then they trot it out. And it's like, well, this is just sort of a faint whisper of what you used to be, and it just still sucks. I'm trying to find some examples here of where this has gone wrong. Like I feel like the
here.
Go ahead. I'm still browsing here.
Yeah, when I'm thinking of modern uniforms, and I know it's kind of a play on a different aesthetic entirely, but I would be very down for the Miami Heat to adopt that Miami Vice color scheme.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say in terms of like my primary. That's probably like the best modern look in my estimation.
I go along with that.
That Vice look is so nice.
It really is.
Like every single version, the black, pink, white, and blue uniforms, as I'm looking at them right now, they're all great. And like it is such a departure from the traditional, what their normal home road uniforms are. And I mean, those are their championship uniforms. I don't know if they can really change those, and it is such a play on the 80s Miami Vice thing, but like, damn if it doesn't work. Like it seems like it should be the kitschiest, tackiest possible.
But it's well executed. That's why it works. It's done right.
Exactly. It works extremely well.
I'm going to throw.
I would love if they did that.
I'm going to throw a modern uniform that just came out a couple years ago into the mix that I really like. If I could find it on here, it's I got to make sure I got to see it again to make sure I really like it as much as I think I do, but I can't find them for some reason.
Which team?
But it's the Pacers.
They don't have the Pacers page, unfortunately.
Well, the current one.
Is it the Hickory High uniforms?
No, I can't find them. Are they even on here?
I can't. I went to the very bottom and it starts the.
All right, here they are. I got it. All right. Now look, I don't think that this is a particularly great look, but if we're talking like modern looks that I kind of like, I like the circle thing around the number that the Pacers did. I think is that the most current? I might have to go back to the mothership for this because this thing's kind of all over the place. But I kind of like it. I mean, would I put it in my favorites? No, but if we're talking purely in terms of modern uniforms, that was when they come up with that last year or the year before?
A couple of years ago. And it's not this page is not up to date. They don't have I think they updated in 2018, 2019, and they look a little different. I mean, there's
this on here. I'm on the mothership now. I know that'll be legit. Let me see. Where are they? There they are. Of course, they have the Roundel logo they used to that I love me some. Oh yeah, it's still there. I love me some Roundels. But yeah, it's not great. But I like it. I guess. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a great design, but I enjoy looking at it. If that makes any sense.
I can't. You brought the Pacers up. I can't do it, man. I'm gonna. It doesn't get to me any better than the late 90s.
No, I was just gonna say, are these as good as their old sets? No, obviously not. That's a great look. The one you just posted, Andy.
That's to me that is one of the best. That's my favorite uniform when I was a kid.
Yeah, was the Pacers awesome look. Yeah.
And I mean, I get it. There's a lot going on there, pinstripes and stuff. But to me, it was clean. It looked insanely good on their home court. I know a lot of people like the what's the set they had before it? FloJo. Yeah, I don't dig on FloJo, man. You guys can keep the FloJo. But it's the latest versions of the Pacers iterations have been really disappointing to me. I have not been a fan at all of. Well, again, like I said,
I would not put them on any best list. I'm just saying that if you're talking like a purely modern look that I think is okay, and that's hardly a ringing endorsement of it, but I'm like, yeah, I don't mind that one. I like what they were trying to do with it. So yeah, I never liked those Reggie Miller uniforms there. Is that the FloJo? Is that what you're referring to?
FloJo, yeah.
Yeah, I never liked those.
So if we're talking modern looks, right?
Should I forget? Oh, I know. Okay, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
So modern looks. One I wanted to throw out. I don't know if they still wear it because I don't follow this team enough, but I really liked over the past few years the black chainmail alternate the Kings had.
Yeah, I can't think of anything in Sacramento Kings history that I would consider good.
As a just to send it, just to send the images so you guys know what I'm talking about. Like that one. Like I really do like that uniform.
Are the Kings who the Royals used to be?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, when they were the Cincinnati Royals, they had good uniforms, but that was I think I was I don't even know if I was even born yet. But.
So I'd put that. I really like the chainmail one. I think like the chainmail look is one of those things where it should be gaudy, but I think because of the team name, they have they make it work for them. Other than that, I'd say I know that we dunk on this team a lot, and they deserve it. But this LA Clippers look, I think, is pretty nice. But going back to what Zach said, this is sort of evocative of a throwback look that they had. So it's it's modern, but it's also like.
Man, I wish they would have leaned into that.
I cannot find a good shot of my favorite Pacers uniform. This is driving me nuts. I'll just use this.
I really wish the Clippers had leaned into that instead of adding the black and trying to center on the LA square thing they made.
Or you don't like the thug life Compton look?
No, and like the Clippers that I grew up knowing too is the one that had the copycat Laker logo, and then literally what I would describe as like a Disneyland basketball team. Like their uniforms with the cursive script are just the most like
generic,
unintimidating, generic. there's nothing to them. They're just like, here is a basketball team. They're red, white, and blue, and it's like
I remember
cool.
the first NBA game I ever went to was the Pistons. It was in like 1989, so they were right in the middle of their championship run. And I thought they had pretty good uniforms, and they played the Clippers. And the Clippers uniforms were so, I was just like, wow, they are just so boring. Even in person, there was just nothing to them. Yeah. It was like watching them play the Washington Generals or whatever that team is the Globetrotters play. It was just this generic basketball team. I remember being disappointed with that, even back then, before I'd lost all my uniform cred.
I was kind of like that. That uniform set, honestly, like, because I felt like the Clippers used to be even more like in the 90s. The Clippers were insanely boring. I mean, not only just as a product, but as like just their uniforms were almost like revolting to the eye to behold. And I feel like after in the early 2000s when they went to this look, I actually felt like it was a vast improvement and not a bad kind of look. It kind of felt to me like the New York Giants, kind of like just simplify. And yeah, I mean, the Clippers as a brand have been kind of just milquetoast for many years now, for what, 30 odd years or more.
What they were wearing when I saw them. If it'll pop up there, maybe. There it goes. Yeah. Okay. Those are the ones that, I mean, they, again, not terrible, but just not very exciting.
If your goal is to not be bad, then you've met that requirement.
I would call that like the baseline. Like, I think the Colorado Rockies in baseball, like the baseline uniform. It's not terrible. It's not good. It's just there. And that to me is like with these Clippers uniforms, where it's like, we're not bad, we're not great either, but we're not terrible. And that's the way I see them.
I think that, I don't know, the Clippers were in kind of, I mean, I'm just going to agree with Zach on the Clippers. Like, they need to lean into the powder blue and the orange and just.
Or go full Buffalo Braves and go back to that.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, there's that.
The powder blue and orange, it gives them some sort of pizzazz that makes them at least interesting to look at. And like. Yeah. This whole attempt this year with the we're Los Angeles' team. Look at our thug life word mark. Like,
how's that shit playing today? By the way, I wonder.
Yeah, right. Just like, man, it's not who they are, and like any attempt to do that otherwise is fake on its face. And we talked about this when they unveiled the uniforms, but. I think leaning into that's leaning into who the Clippers are as their history, but it's not the laughingstock Clippers. Mm-hmm. It's just a solid design with a different kind of catch your eye visual that can make them stand out, especially when you're going up against the Lakers, who are purple and gold and everything that is flash and pizzazz in NBA history. Do something like this, and you might be able to catch the eye of somebody at least, rather than being tryhards or generic. So I think that's definitely a direction they should go, but they never will. You know,
nothing on my
build a stupid arena.
On my favorite Pacers uniform there.
It's all right.
Before my time, it's just kind of
all right.
Yeah, the blue's too bright. The gold is too light. This feels.
Oh, you would like the Atlanta's version, which was green and blue and green, I think, or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't like Indiana or Atlanta's version of that. I know it's just extra 70s, and it just doesn't do it.
It's so dated in my mind, and not in a good way.
You guys got no respect for
no this
disco era. Come on,
this is the best look in Clippers history, in my opinion, and they're not even the Clippers. It's just the Buffalo Braves. Like, I love it. I love this uniform.
And it's basically just the Trailblazers in a different color set, and it's fine. The logo's cool. I mean, the problem with that pattern is that it makes me immediately think of the Blazers, and I go, the Blazers. Oh yeah, their uniforms
like
kick ass.
Diagonal Blazers kind of here, like
yeah.
All right.
That's a team that I was going to bring up is the Portland Trailblazers, and I don't think that there's really ever been a bad version of their main set.
What did you think of the? I don't know when they wore these, but they had the Portland was vertical on the road jersey. I think it was. I always thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to say on the Portland Trailblazers, because despite the fact that they've never, like, aside from some of their earlier, funkier stuff, they've really kind of kept the same look. I actually have very opinionated takes on it, because in my mind, the Blazers look achieved perfection in the 90s. And the tweaks they've made since have all been downgrades. Like they made the word mark pointier. They added silver outlines to everything, which I thought took away from it. But in the 90s, it was still just, you had like the bold stripes. You had a really cool bold word mark with a drop shadow that looked restrained but also eye-catching, and everything just worked so well together. And it was only later when they started adding unnecessary silver and pointy serifs to everything that I thought it kind of detracted a bit.
Yeah, but
90s,
even
that's
then,
the
it's good.
Go ahead. That was like the Drexler.
Yeah, the Drexler.
Those were solid. Those are really
the Drexler
good uniforms.
Blazers. Like I think like that's kind of like the perfect one.
I'm going to throw in really quick here. This is my one of my all-time favorite uniforms. I want to see what you guys think of it, and I'll either get ridiculed or you'll be like, "Yep, that's a good one." So here we go. The Baltimore / Washington Bullets.
I mean, it's again, but
I don't know why I like these kitschy uniforms, but I do. I think they're cool.
So Greg, you earlier just lambasted the Clippers for looking like the Washington Generals, and then you give me this, which they just look like the Globetrotters. So I mean, like, what's pick a lane here as far as like granted, like this one is very loud and it's kind of silly, but the Stars, I like the Stars, but it's again what this says to me is not bullets. It says to me like the Sixers are probably doing it better. When I see this, I feel like
it's funny because this particular picture is not, I don't think, a great representation of this uniform because it's Wes Unseld. And he was a kind of a, well, as you can see, he wasn't exactly a picture of like perfection as far as body type goes. Let me try to find Elvin Hayes. He'll be
when it comes to this design. I honestly think the modern Wizards have done it better than the old Bullets used to.
Yeah.
I kind of like
the white version's better. I should call it the home version. The home version's better.
The hands thing never made sense to me. I didn't understand like what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
It's the was like that.
Well, you know what? Now that I'm looking at it, it's like, well, I thought I liked this uniform, but now that I'm seeing it like up close, I'm going, you guys are right. It's not as great as I think it is. Okay, never mind.
If you want to do,
I don't know why you're listening to me anyway. I have no cred with this stuff. So,
if you're going to do this broadly general theme, I think that the Nets did it better.
See, you just took away my number one all-time greatest ever basketball uniform there.
The ABA Nets, I think.
I think they did 2 years in the NBA with that uniform too.
Yeah, like where it's I think it works because it's still fairly restrained. You have the bold striping down one side of the Stars, but the word marks are all pretty basic. The numbers don't have any outline, so it's eye-catching, but it's not overwhelmingly so.
No, to me, that is my favorite basketball uniform ever. Is that set right there, the Nets with the New York Nets? Love it.
I mean, in like a vector image, it looks good. It looks like really awesome, but like in execution, it looks lopsided. And it looks just kind of, maybe it's because it's an older picture. Maybe it's because the materials they used probably were a little cheap. But like that to me, like this photograph of Julius Erving here is, I am not impressed. I don't feel like it's
it doesn't
executed well.
Not in that particular picture. I've seen better shots of it than that. But yeah,
But on the surface, if you look at like the image that Mike posted here, the colors are wonderful and the layout is great, but it's lopsided, man. Like it's just lopsided. Now, I wanted to get your opinion on like earlier in this photos. For those listening, the wonderful part of podcasts, you can totally see what we're doing. We're posting images in the chat here. I wanted your opinion on this like late 90s, early 2000s Raptors uniform. What some of my favorite uniforms were this era. And Mike, I think you said you were not a fan, right?
I'm not. Okay, so I've kind of got two minds of this that's really dependent on kind of my mindset. Like when I was a kid, these uniforms came about at the perfect time. Like the Raptors for a while were just right up my alley. It's really weird. Because I was right in that little kid loves dinosaurs and Jurassic Park demographic when the Raptors' original 90s uniforms came out, and I loved them. And then as I, got, a bit older and started, entering like the tweens and then early teens, that's when the Raptors unveiled these uniforms that you posted, Andy. And like, it was almost like at the perfect time because it's like, myself and other kids of my generation were starting to sort of grow up a bit, and our tastes were changing, and so the change came at the right time, and I loved these uniforms, and I still do like them. I think that the Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady era Toronto Raptors uniforms, like it's a really well done set because it keeps that 90s color scheme. It keeps the purple, it keeps the purple, red, and black, but it's all toned down, but it's also got really modern touches like the chevrons on the side and the back part of the road uniforms being black while the front was purple is like a really neat thing that gives it a bit of a distinct flair, but is otherwise, not so eye-catching. Like the thing, it's the proper way to do that old Kings alternate where they had like 3/4 of it was black, but then 1/4 of it was purple, and it just looked really dumb. But I think this Raptors uniform did it right by doing it half and half, front and back. So I would say that I actually really love these uniforms in a vacuum. But the reason why I'm not too fond on them now is simply because like the memories that kind of go along with it, like the purple wrap, like the this version of the purple Raptors is like these are the uniforms associated to me with Vince Carter missing that potential game-winning shot. It's the uniforms associated with McGrady leaving, and then it's the uniform associated with Carter and the team having a complete breakdown and him jettisoning off to New Jersey. So it's one of these things where it's like I really like the set aesthetically. Like it's almost like the perfect uniform if you wanted to take the Raptors' original look but make it respectable. It's almost perfect, but it's one of these things like now that the team has actually won a title in a relatively different enough look, I kind of like, do I want to go back to that look and all the baggage that goes along with it? It's like, nah, not really. So it's complicated on my end as a Raptors fan.
Greg, go ahead. The image you posted there, I just what's that? Who's that guy? Darren.
I don't know.
Darren
it's just his uniform's not lopsided.
Yeah, right. But man, that 8 is huge. Jesus, that 8 is huge.
That it is.
I was going to mention when it comes to, we talked about uniforms that have been so crappy that when they unveil a throwback, it's almost like a breath of fresh air. This one, to me, I forgot all about this one. Just how good does this look? My God, like just how awful the Grizzlies have been for the last 15 odd years. I mean, granted, the original Grizzlies look was not great, but comparatively to the bland kind of blah blue and yellow they've descended into, like this looks like some sort of miracle has occurred in comparison.
It's really weird. The Grizzlies, because like the Grizzlies' current uniform, the blue and the yellow, they went to that, I think, right after the Nuggets did. Like the Nuggets went to that scheme first, and then the Grizzlies like copied them. And so in my mind, it was like, oh, like the blue and like the double blue and yellow team in the NBA, that's the Nuggets. And for the longest time it was like, and I guess the Grizzlies are also there. So it's I'd agree with you, Andy. It's completely lifeless.
Yeah,
I love those Vancouver Grizzlies uniforms. The only thing that I don't care for is the giant logo on the pants or the shorts.
I could do without the drop shadow kind of word mark. Like if you could clean that up a little bit.
It's not a drop shadow. It's like it was carved out of a tree, like a totem pole.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, and I love that they brought them back as throwbacks. And I just wish there was some way to actually make those work in Memphis.
See. Okay, I think there actually is. I think there is, and I know this because when the team first moved to Memphis, they kind of did it. So this was the team's look when they first moved to Memphis, and I think that honestly, this isn't a bad look. Like,
it's just kind of generic, the word marks.
Because
I think it loses the flavor when you get rid of the Northwestern Native American designs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to suggest taking the Native American designs out and put little FedEx logos all the way around.
I mean,
they wanted to be the Express, right?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
So it's actually hilarious if you think about it, because like when the Grizzlies moved to Memphis, they FedEx bought them and moved them to Memphis, and they wanted to call them the Memphis Express, and the NBA came in and said, no, you can't just name the team after your company. And then
now fast forward to 20 or 19, and look who's sponsoring them.
No, you fast forward to you fast forward to the present day, and the Memphis Grizzlies home white uniform doesn't say Grizzlies. It's a white jersey. It says Memphis on it, and it's got a FedEx logo on it. So it's like they ended up there anyway.
Aren't there a couple teams that are?
What company do you think they use to move the stuff from Vancouver to Memphis?
UPS.
I'm gonna go ahead and say Canada Post.
I would love if they roll up to FedEx Arena in UPS trucks.
Mayflower, like the Colts did back in the old days. Mayflower,
right.
United Man Lines, DHL. That's perfect. I got what I'm going to throw into the mix here, fellas. I was just curious because I kind of like it, but I like it, but I don't want to know if I'd put it in my all-time favorites. But I want to see what you guys think. Oh, that's going to be if that works. There we go. The Seattle Supersonics.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that a yes? Good, Zach, or is that a yes?
Yeah. No, it's a solid look. It's solid and it's unique. I just don't know if I'm sold on it.
So
I'll tell you how I feel about it. It's one of those I really want to like it, but there's just something about it that I don't really like it. If that makes sense.
For me, when I paid more attention when the Sonics were around and I was paying attention to the NBA, that was when they were in the blue, bronze, and red phase of their existence.
Stuff, yeah.
And I just those colors just seem kind of. I mean, it's very 90s, where it just seems like you took a nice bright palette and darkened it for no reason. But they went back to this a little bit before they moved. I think Kevin Durant's
one season
there, they were wearing those.
They wore these, yeah.
So nothing gives me as much of a double take as far as NBA uniforms go, quite like being reminded occasionally that the Seattle Supersonics once wore a rust red jersey. It's like it's like
Gary Payton in that red uniform is very odd. Yeah,
I used to have a Sean Kemp jersey from that, the green home or road jersey from that era. Believe it or not.
To me, and I'm fully expecting you guys to tell me that this is bland and dumb and it's not as good, but to me, this is the best the Sonics ever looked. Sending it right now. There you go.
Mike, why did you just post an Oklahoma City Thunder jersey?
Because everything about the Oklahoma City Thunder is awful, including their stupid terrorist memorial.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
If we were talking about worst uniforms in NBA history, that might be up there for
that is the
myriad
worst
of reasons.
That is the worst one, and yet like there are probably worse designs, but like nothing makes me as uncomfortable as that Oklahoma City terrorist bombing one.
Yes, these New York Knicks uniforms have stripes of both legs to mark the Twin Towers.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. No,
Actually, guys, that picture I put up, that is not what Durant wore with the Sonics.
Not quite. It was similar, but it was a little bit darker green, and the fonts were a little different.
Yeah, they changed the font a bit. Okay, another one. Okay, so this one, I wouldn't say this is my favorite Sonics jersey, but this is honestly the one that corresponds to my favorite Sonics logo. This isn't bad.
That's fun.
Oh fuck! I mean, it's supposed to
the
one of those
stripes across the pants are dumb, but you know.
Greg,
sorry about that.
This is a terrible uniform.
It looks like you had a stroke and you just like fell on the keyboard.
Manifesto by accident. Sorry about that.
Like 8,000 characters.
Shit.
But I don't know. The Sonics.
Delete, motherfucker. You know what? It won't let me now.
The Durant. The Durant Sonics look is really weird because yes, they went back to the classic colors and they went back to the sort of classic Sonics template with the arch, across the front of the jersey. But the thing that really doesn't sit well with me about them is that they used a serifed font that in my mind looked a bit too traditional or old-fashioned for a team called the Sonics. And not only that, it was a serifed font with an inline. So it was like the serifed green font with a gold inline. And maybe this was just me. I'm probably alone in this, but to me, those Durant Sonics jerseys always made me like they reminded me of like a relish bottle. Like it looks like the sort of font that you would see on a relish bottle.
It's like a food product, like a Heinz label or something.
Yeah, like I'd expect to find like Heinz like relish, and it would have like relish written in that Sonics uniform font. It's such a weird thing, I know, but that's what always came to mind for me. Just to share it. Where is it? I have too many files. Okay, here you go. Yeah, like don't get me wrong. Good look. Evokes, some classic Seattle Supersonics identities, but that word mark, man, like the serifs don't work, and it reminds me of relish.
Yeah, I like the of that version. I like the old version I posted originally. That's the I don't know when that's from. 88, I think it says in the picture, something like that. But yeah, that one's not great either.
So if you guys will allow me,
that's Xavier McDaniel. I didn't even realize that. Okay.
So if you guys would allow me to indulge, I want to share with you a uniform. This is probably my most out there uniform that I don't expect any of you guys to agree with me on. And I'm not saying this is the best thing ever, and I'm not saying necessarily that it's even the best thing this team did. But I have a soft spot for the original Charlotte Bobcats uniforms.
Oh, Mike.
I like them.
I mean, Mike,
clear side panels or we riot.
I mean, if you took away the just abysmal like numbers and the word mark, and you put something with dignity there, I think it would be pretty reasonable. I mean, no matter what you do, I think it's going to end up looking like a creative team that just kind of doesn't have any kind of personality. I mean, it has some like memories associated with it, but none of them are good. For somebody who, you seem to be very, memory driven when it comes to picking a uniform, which is totally, absolutely fine and totally logical. But like to me, the Bobcats they never offered anything at all ever in their existence that was like.
See, you're absolutely right. No, you are absolutely right. Like everything about the Bobcats' history was a complete sham, and I agree. Although I liked the logos, and I admit I bought a Charlotte Bobcats hoodie when I heard that they were changing back to the Hornets. Just like I wanted to get one before.
I remember you talking about that on the show. They were going to do that.
Yeah. So I still have it somewhere, but the thing about it, right? And I think this is why I tend to kind of like the Bobcats look, and because you're right, Andy, like in terms of why I tend to like things sort of like this association of success in my mind is because if we're being completely honest, the original Charlotte Hornets are not the current Charlotte. The current Charlotte Hornets are the Bobcats. It is like so this isn't the same team that the original Hornets that had those playoff runs or what have you. And you look at the current Hornets since they became the Hornets, since they got rid of the Bobcats identity. And the current Hornets accomplished anything? Like, have they done anything of note? No.
I forget they even exist. That's where I'm at.
They took the original Hornets identity, which was pretty cool in its own right, and they replicated it with zero personality. The current Hornets looks are completely bland, and they keep insisting on these stupid black Buzz City alternates that
Go Cha.
Right.
Yeah, they have stupid, they have alternates that say Buzz City and Cha. They've got primary uniforms that are somehow the classic uniforms but boring. And so, like, I kind of look at this travesty that is the current Charlotte Hornets uniforms, and I kind of think back to the Bobcats. It's like, yeah, those Bobcats uniforms, they were associated with really bad teams, and the word marks and the numbers are wonky, and the clear side panels that we were promised never came to fruition. But like the color scheme is nice, I think, and the segmented side panels of the angled striping is modern, but it's not overbearing. And I just think that if you put a bit more time into it, like Andy said, and came up with a new word mark and number font, that it could be salvageable and probably far more interesting than the pale comparison of an old team that they currently trot out.
How dare you disrespect Bob's Cats?
Bob's Cats, right? I love the team name too. Like, it's like because back then the Hornets had moved to New Orleans and they were still the Hornets, so the new Charlotte team couldn't be the Hornets. And it's like, well, what are we going to call the team? And the owner's name was Bob. So they went with
it was
Bobcats.
the wasn't he the CEO or the owner of BAT Network?
Yeah. I forget his last name, but his first name was Robert. And
it's not the first time that's happened in pro sports. I mean, the New York Rangers are the Rangers because their
Texas
owner was Tex, and the team didn't have a name. They just were colloquially called Texas Rangers.
Yeah. Well, how about, come on, probably the most famous one of all would be the Cleveland Browns, right?
Oh, yeah.
Literally named after the coach, yeah. Did he own the team? He didn't own the team too, did he? No,
because he eventually got muscled out by
Art
Modell, right?
who wanted to do even more famous things.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
Yeah,
but
we've been
Baltimore
Cleve-Jack.
Modells.
Cleve-Jack, your 2019 or 2020 Glorious Tournament victory champion, by the way.
Respect.
I don't know if we can ever hold the tournament again after that.
But just to touch up on any of our listeners who maybe don't get the clear side panel joke, because this is probably the only time I'm ever going to get a chance to talk about these Bobcats uniforms. I don't see when it's ever going to come up again. Is that so I remember, because this was actually really
Mike's
early.
Taking a shot here, folks. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh yeah. So back in the day.
I don't think this would come up in our yearly name an NBA player discussion.
So back in the day when the Bobcats first formed, that was early on in my CCSLC tenure, and one of the rumors going around at the time, right, was that the new Charlotte Bobcats uniforms would include a feature that was not present on any other NBA uniforms. It's going to be a completely new thing, completely unique to them. And one of the rumors, somebody started saying it's going to be clear side panels, and it was promoted as if it were like gospel truth, and and everyone was like arguing about it, and and eventually what it ended up being was that on those original Bobcats uniforms, like the back part of the collar was a V-neck, and that was like obviously it's a V-neck collar, right? But instead of just like going to a crew cut in the back, it dipped into another slight V-neck in the back, and that was the unique thing that no other NBA uniform had.
Yeah, the clear side panels would have been better.
They did give us racing flag side panels.
They did do that.
Yes, they did do that. That's right. Yeah.
Atrocious look.
So I'm going through like these jerseys that I like from the old days, and Andy's right. They all look lopsided. Like this Royals jersey that I posted. I'm like, that's really cool. Then I go, well, no, it doesn't work. I mean, look at that. Look at the striping on that.
It is odd. I mean,
it is a.
There's a lot of them.
It's a unique take.
Yeah.
So,
like it's funny because in every other uniform that I can mostly
that's I think a Nike or an Adidas Swingman. That's like a current cut, so you can't even blame it on that. Yeah.
No, like I'm trying to think of in most sports, everything kind of borders on symmetry, whether it's hockey, baseball, football. Like in hockey, the only one that I can think of like off the top of my head is the Atlanta Thrashers one.
Mm-hmm.
In football, Nike did that weird thing where the quarterbacks had different colored shoulders in college that one year.
Right. Yeah.
Can't think of too much else when it comes to like lopsided.
Oh, did
like,
you mention
the lopsided designs?
The Atlanta Thrashers?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. The Blue Land jerseys.
But in basketball, it's fairly common, and it doesn't. I can't think of many times where it looks great.
I can understand the desire to try because basketball uniforms are, you have less real estate.
Yeah.
You have less real estate, and you kind of have to do the word mark number on the front. So it gets to the point where it's like, that's just, side panels. That's where a lot of the design happens. So then you do that, and a lot of designers, I guess, think like, well, if side panels are going to be where we do the design, let's experiment with that. So you get a lot of, we're only going to put it on one side, or like it's going to change.
And that's what kind of brings us all the way back to what started this discussion. It like the Suns, because I'm trying to think. That one's slightly lopsided, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to think of like, I can't think of a good basketball uniform that has a logo on the front as opposed to the word mark and number. And the Suns one is really one of the few, if maybe the only, that does it really well, where you have the basketball thing. And that's why I think it's like, it's the very edge of what is good and pushes the boundary of what basketball uniforms can do, whereas most of these are, not all that different from each other.
So
realistically,
I'll go ahead, Andy.
I'll say the reason on that same exact tone. That's why I was curious about your thoughts about this Utah Jazz Red Rocks uniform set, because I feel like it's the only time the Utah Jazz have like really found something that's truly interesting. That was like, and some people hate this look, and I get why, but I feel like the like foundation of it is unique enough and appropriate enough for the area that it kind of is getting close to that like that kind of invisible border that Zach is talking about, where you're threading a needle here. To what extent you are successful is debatable, but like I feel like these are pretty well executed, but they're apparently quite divisive.
So the thing
I would say the Houston Astros did it. they stole your thunder on the sunset gradient.
I would say that like the thing that really bugs me about them, right, is that to me, I still kind of have this nostalgic connection to the 90s jazz look, which kind of played up the mountains in a winter kind of theme. It's like snow-capped mountains. And then so for the jazz to then kind of turn around and be like, oh, it's our mountain scenery, but we're going to emphasize like the red rock aspect in a very warm and sunny color scheme. It's like so jarring to me, and it makes sense. I get why it's like that, and I get that it's completely, totally sensible to have a look like that. But it's just weird, and I can't think of another NBA team that has such, an opposite take on the same subject matter. I don't think it exists anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about when we get to the hockey jerseys all the time about having a Vancouver Canucks problem, or in baseball a Padres problem, right? I think if the Jazz started to do stuff like that, I think they end up having a similar thing where it's like, well, you have your New Orleans purple, yellow, and green phase, which can look good. You have your Mountains phase, which can look good. And you have kind of everything else in between. And then you had in red, yellow, orange look. And that's my thing with that is, what are your team colors? Sunset. Okay. I just,
again,
when it comes to like latching onto an identity, it's just like sunsets.
So that's getting way more into the like philosophy with your brand and kind of an identity thing. I was merely just talking about, like, in a nutshell, like, just from the perspective of like, I wouldn't expect this to look good if you had described it to me. But the first time I saw these in action, I was very impressed. And and I'm not somebody who usually likes gradients at all, but I feel like the way this was done, and I think they have a unique court for this as well, which goes with it. It's pretty cool. I just think it's just unique, and I feel like it's a step in the right direction compared to like, let's make it black with sleeves.
Well,
Sorry,
there's one that we haven't talked about yet that I'm surprised hasn't come up, and I've got to get everybody's thoughts on this.
Oh,
I'm really surprised no one's brought it up yet, because that, speaking of devices, people either love that thing or hate it.
I'm not a fan. I feel like it was done better. Let me see. They did a newer version with newer colors that I really liked.
I agree with that. Yep. I think I found a picture of that. Let me see if I can get to it.
Yeah, the new version's good. The old version with like the very blocky, very 80s design. My problem with that is like, it's cool, but I don't think of the Denver skyline as like an iconic thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm remembering it right.
You have office buildings with the mountains behind it, which cool, but if you just put their skyline up and said, "What city is that?"
I'd have no freaking clue. Aren't these pretty popular on the boards though, or am I imagining that?
I think they are probably the single most popular Nuggets uniforms.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's down to the design being good, or if it's just that, everything else the team has kind of been underwhelming.
Yeah, we talked about that when they came out, the gold ones with the cityscape on them. Yeah, I was just curious because I always thought it was just way too much going on for a basketball jersey. Just I think it's a cool idea, but I think first off it screams 70s is the way I look at it. They're trying to be gradient with the cityscape and the whole bit, the number above, the whatever that is, and the name, the word mark down at the bottom, and the whole thing, and blah blah blah, and on and on and on. So I just want to see what you guys thought about it.
It's just so, like, it's dated. To say it's dated is one thing, but it's more than that. There's just something about it where I don't know if it's like it's busy, yes, but it reminds me of like an old, like if I was in like the 70s or 80s and I went to buy a bucket of Legos or something. Like I feel like it's something like a child's toy kind of aesthetic.
Going
yeah.
Going with the idea of like newer uniforms, I kind of think that the Nuggets like recent-ish attempt to update that actually worked really well, and maybe this doesn't, maybe this is not, maybe this doesn't have what's necessary to work as a primary identity, but like I have a soft spot for this newer take on it that I just sent you guys. Like, that's not bad. I don't think that's bad. That could work.
Yeah. See, that one makes the mountain more prominent.
Right.
Which does.
It still looks like an Atari
Atari
2600 video game, though. Sorry, I mean it just does.
Yeah.
And I think you could probably render it better than that. I've got one here that I'm surprised hasn't come up at all, because I think this is this is a timeless classic, and I'm surprised. Well, I'm surprised it hasn't come up.
Bulls.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's just it falls.
I mean, I know it's boring.
I wouldn't even say
right ways.
I wouldn't even say it's boring, honestly. Like
not boring, but yeah,
it's overstayed its welcome. I think it's
the
what
the Bulls are a team, and I think this is kind of getting into what Andy said actually in a roundabout way. If y'all indulge me, but like, okay, so the Bulls prior to Jordan were a nothing team, right? Mm-hmm. Jordan comes, whole story. We've all seen The Last Dance, 6 titles. Then he leaves. He retires. And the team hasn't done much of anything of note since. So the Bulls, I think, are one of those teams that incorrectly kind of gets lumped in. Like, I think people tend to think, the Bulls are one of those classic teams, the Lakers and the Celtics. And they're really not. Like, the Bulls were nothing before Jordan.
That's not quite true, Mike. They made the playoffs quite a bit in the 70s.
Okay, but what did they accomplish though? Like, that's my point. Like you can say, they made the playoffs in the 70s, but like, what did they do? Like, does anybody remember those teams?
Is there
I do.
Is there a great Chicago Bull player that
tell me a great. You could be making that name up, and I wouldn't be able to.
I swear I'm not.
but my point is that like, this is not a team. This is not a team that's like the Celtics or the Lakers, or even some other teams like the 76ers or Warriors who don't have that winning pedigree. But there are some titles and notable history there prior to modernity. So with the Bulls, getting back to what Andy said, where it's like they've overstayed their welcome, where it's like, this isn't even necessarily a classic. The Jordan era Bulls look isn't even a classic NBA identity. It was an identity that came about when Jordan was hitting his prime. It got associated with one of the most dominant runs a basketball team has ever experienced, and then it's been associated with a lot of mediocre basketball since then. And to be clear, a lot of classic teams go through periods where they are either mediocre or they suck. The Yankees have sucked in pinstripes. The Canadiens have sucked in the, blue, blanc, and rogue look. But those identities are still seen as classic because there are decades upon decades, if not centuries of winning tradition behind them. And the Bulls Jordan era look that for the most part has persevered to the present day, they really don't have that historic cachet to them. They have the 6 seasons. They have the 8 years, from Jordan's first title to his last title, where they were relevant.
They wore similar uniforms well before Jordan showed up.
They did, yes.
So I think see, that's the key though. If you've got a short enough name that you can make the font big enough on the front of the jersey, it looks good. And I think Bulls is short enough. You couldn't do that with Cavaliers or with what I mean?
So with Cavs,
to me though, with the Bulls, it's weird that their defining design characteristic is the shorts panel.
The diamond side panels, yes.
Yeah. Like, nobody else could ever wear that design, because I know, like, that's the Chicago Bulls, that's Michael Jordan. So I guess that's what made, but again, what kind of like what Mike is saying, what makes it a look that will probably endure forever is that it's the uniforms that Michael Jordan wore, and that's pretty much it.
What's really funny about the diamond shorts thing, right, is that it wasn't even distinctly theirs. That used to be just like a thing that some teams did. Like the Spurs used to have it, and then they got rid of it. It's just that the Bulls just never got rid of it. But it used to be a fairly common thing before, teams went away from it.
Mike, I'm going to throw something at you that I think will help me defend these uniforms.
Okay.
Aren't you a big fan of the Chicago White Sox road look, the grays?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so there's talk about a uniform. They've won one championship in those uniforms. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's all they've done. I think we'd all agree, though, those are pretty good looking uniform set the White Sox have there.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, all right, maybe not all of us, but
well, Andy is a heretic Cubs fan, so
hey, I like the White Sox enough. I'm not anti-Sox, but I understand why you think it's a good look, but the problem is that it's just not. So there you go. There's my opinion.
Look, I understand that
they should go back to wearing shorts.
No. I just think the White Sox have you screw up black, white, and gray. They screw it up, and they just have. They could do so much better.
Okay,
and
so
then
this is getting off the topic of basketball uniforms. But I am curious. Okay, as a Chicagoan who, as you said, you're not anti-White Sox. So as a Chicago sports fan, what is in your opinion like the definitive, really good White Sox uniform?
I think the White Sox should just wear like a black top and pinstripes whites at home. I think they've had historically pretty good solid black. When they do like the black top. I don't like, just as a rule, jerseys that have no sleeves. So if you do the stupid undershirt, you look like a jackass out there when you don't have sleeves. Get some goddamn sleeves on your uniforms, White Sox. Bunch of candy asses playing with your pinstripe bullshit white or black t-shirts underneath it. Anyway, I don't know. The White Sox.
The Cubs wear pinstripes?
No. I'm talking with the
vest.
The vest.
Yeah,
they don't wear those anymore, do they?
They did at one point, I think.
Okay, all right.
No,
I know they did.
They don't anymore. But that when I was really getting into baseball, that was what they looked like, and I was like, why the hell would any team like wear a vest? The Reds did it.
Remember when those things were all the rage? I mean, the Indians had them. I think
vests were huge.
I remember in like the late 90s.
Marlins wore them.
This might even be worse. This might even be a worse uniform than the Black Jays. I remember the Blue Jays it was a vest. It was a white vest with blue undershirt, and on the chest underneath the Blue Jays word mark on like off to the side was like the steroid Blue Jay that they had, and it was like it's the dumbest thing.
That was my one game at Skydome. That's what the Jays were wearing.
I'm so sorry. That's the one that you had to see.
That's what they were wearing that day. But
my favorite thing about the vests in baseball was, without fail, some idiot would buy like a replica of the vest, and then or he would buy the authentic vest, and the authentic vest didn't have the sleeves attached like the replica did.
Right.
And so you'd see some idiot walking around in the stands with the vest and not the corresponding undershirt or no undershirt at all. And just like, what do you think you're doing? Go put on a baseball shirt, you weirdo.
Those things are. I mean, they were pretty big. I think in the '60s. I want to say. Not like I know the Indians wore vests in the '60s. I think the Reds did.
Yeah, vests came back huge in the '90s.
And you would think for being the traditionalist that I am that I would have loved them. I thought they were the dumbest fucking thing I'd ever seen.
The '90s. Okay, so the '90s vest trend got really dumb to me because say what you will about the '60s vests. They're not the best uniforms of all time, but like back then in like the '60s when a team went with a vest look, like the vests were specific, like they were actual vests. They were tailored differently than regular jerseys. When the vest trend came back in the '90s, they just started producing regular jerseys without sleeves.
Yeah.
Right.
And another thing that bothered me about it was that they were all so lazy. Like I distinctly remember, because this was just when I was getting into really caring about uniform designs, was when the vest trend began to hit. And it seemed like every uniform, every time a vest uniform came out, it was just like, oh, it's just the home, but we cut the sleeves off. And
that's what the Angels was. Like some of them would go the extra mile and like do something, but for the most part, you're right. It's the home uniform with cut off sleeves, and then you throw your solid color undershirt.
Like I don't want to keep us down the baseball rabbit hole, but like Roy Halladay deserved better than to wear this uniform. Like, look at that. That's one of the greatest pitchers in Blue Jays history.
That's embarrassing.
And he's in a fucking oversized floppy vest.
Yeah, the vest in that points out another thing.
Blue Jay.
That points out another thing about the vests that always were stupid, is because there wasn't a set like shirt to wear.
Yeah.
So you'd have some guys that wore the long sleeve undershirts and some guys wore short sleeve undershirts, and it's just like, you look stupid. You look stupid if you're going out there with long sleeves and a vest.
Yeah,
I think that we should stop there, okay? Because I think we should do baseball uniforms next week, because you can see we could go on.
We're all very opinionated.
Right.
Just wait until we get into the hockey vests.
Hockey vest?
No. No, the vest of hockey is pants. And
thankfully, those didn't come back.
No, because they were dangerous.
But anyway, so real quick, guys, before we wrap it up, just so if you got it off the top of your head, go for it. If not, don't worry about it. 3 best NBA uniforms. Your 3 favorite, not the 3 best, 3 favorite.
Oh,
I'll go. I'll start us off.
Okay, take it, Mike.
Number 1, Phoenix Suns, Barkley era look.
Okay.
Number 2 would be the inaugural Milwaukee Bucks uniforms, where they were just very simple, just green. They had red and white paneling, and it said Milwaukee and Bucks across the front, and there was like this little like deer head on the pants. Like, simple, works. 3, this one was tricky, but I have to go with the 90s Trailblazers.
All right. Anybody else?
Late 90s, early 2000s Indiana Pacers, the late 90s, early 2000s Toronto Raptors, and pretty much any era of the Portland Trailblazers. But I'll go ahead and actually, damn it, I gotta include the Suns. Scratch the Blazers, put in the Barkley Suns.
All right, mine is, if I had to pick, I'm just gonna go with 3 that I really like, not in any particular order. The New York Knicks, back in when they were like the right Knicks uniforms, and people that know uniforms know what I mean. I don't want to get into the years and all that, but before they went to the black side panels and all that is one. Mike brought up another one. The Milwaukee Bucks, the inaugural set was almost perfect. I don't know why they ever messed with it. And of course the Los Angeles Lakers, either 86 or 87, slanted or unslanted word mark for me.
And Greg, I'm gonna kind of break the rules here and say I kind of like the Knicks with the extraneous black.
It's not terrible. It's not bad. I agree.
It kind of works for them.
Tom O'Grady is now your best friend, because
oh god,
you two are the only ones who now like.
No, I don't think they're bad either. I just think that the Knicks. I'm trying to think like not the Willis Reed era, because then you get those weird cuts and all that stuff. But there was a point where the Knicks uniforms were what I thought were like perfect, with just the New York across the front. Really nice.
My favorite Knicks uniforms are the ones that have the apple on the shorts with the Yankees logo.
All right. Anyway, so okay, Zach, what else?
Mine will be the 87 to 99 Lakers. The first Kobe title, if we want to,
or the second or third, fourth Kareem, Magic, and Worthy title, if you want to go that route too. 87, right.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna say the black Miami Vice uniform.
All right.
Okay.
And then either the black or the powder blue, and then I guess the Suns, yeah. Suns.
All right.
I'm in the same zone as Andy. The Suns are the Blazers.
I like the Suns uniforms too. Blazers too. So we could go on all night with this stuff, folks. But we'll do baseball next week, guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So we're gonna go on a sabbatical from COVID and all the other bullshit that's going on in the world. We're going down the rabbit hole on uniforms. We're gonna do the 4 major sports over the next 4 weeks. That work for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm down.
All right. So baseball next week. We'll save. I guess we'll save the NFL, or should we do the NHL or the NFL last? Because those are the 2 big ones, really.
I mean, that we could do the hockey uniforms till the sun goes down.
Yeah.
Comes back up and goes back down.
Yeah.
Goes back up. Yeah.
You know that you can get Mike and I in hockey uniforms until the heat death of the universe.
I have very strong opinions on this subject.
All right, so we'll do that'll be a 4-part series. We'll do the baseball next week. We'll figure it out from there. But on that note, we're going to call it a night, folks. As always, thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports. Subscribe via the Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spreaker, the YouTubes, and wherever fine podcasting is sold. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next week.
Later.
Later.
Adios.